going to talk about skills that are involved in any kind of communication, that is listening, speaking, reading and writing. These four skills are the major skills. There are many more, but these four are always involved in business communication or any kind of communication. How these skills are related to your world is that if you do not know how to listen, you won't be able to understand what your client wants, what your company requires. If you don't know how to speak, you won't be able to get a client. The way you speak is the only thing that will get you any kind of product or any kind of deal. The politicians, if we look at them, they are so good at speaking that people are automatically captured by the trance they put upon the people. So speaking is one of the most important skills in business communication. Then reading has a number of techniques. Of course, you will get memos, you will get letters, you will get so many manuals to read, and it would so happen that you won't have time to read each and every line or each and every page. So those techniques are very important as business communication. And then writing, of course. Writing is like evidence. If you have something in writing, you have the evidence to prove anything. So every kind of deal that you make with your clients are going to be first verbal, that would involve speaking and listening, of course, and then written. Every deal is finalized through written piece of paper. So your writing skills are supposed to be very good in order to be a successful businessman or a woman. Now, what is meant by listening? Of course, it's a everyday affair. We listen to a number of things, number of people. We listen to news, we listen to music, etc. And it is said that we spend more time to listening than speaking. When you're alone and you're, let's say, taking classes online, you're listening. Most of the time you're listening. And it is a skill which is taken for granted for the most of the part of our learning. Now, you have done FA or FSC, or all of you have done HSSC, right? Equal to higher secondary school certificate. How many of you have actually given papers for listening skills? I can safely say that there would be only one or two if you have been studying with Beacon or city school or schools like that. Otherwise, in government schools and in private schools, most of them, they do not have a separate paper for listening skills, but listening is very much important. Successful listening is challenging and requires a lot of practice. Effective listening is a dynamic activity that seeks out the meaning intended in the messages sent by the speaker. So listening is different than hearing. Let's have a look. What is the difference between listening and hearing? Hearing is an involuntary act that happens automatically. A truck rolling by on the road in the front of your house. That is hearing. If your mother is talking in the background, you're hearing her, but you're not trying to listen to what exactly she's saying to your sister, right? If you're listening to the birds chirping, you don't want to listen to them, but you're able to hear them because they are in the background. So that is hearing, where you do not intend to hear. But listening is a voluntary activity. You do it with purpose. For example, most of you, not all of you, are listening to this lecture with voluntary activity because you need to know what is going on in the lecture, and then only then you will be able to participate fully and actively. And listening demands perfect coordination between the ears and the brain. You cannot just take it for granted or listen for the sake of it. You will have to comprehend it as well. That is why you are listening with intention. It is creative and interactive and interpretive process. So that is the difference between listening and hearing. Now, there are a number of techniques for effective listening. I'm going to name some of them. In order to be able to listen to things, you should have an open mind. You should sit alert and look the speaker in the eye with a view to establish your interest in him or her. Now, you have been studying with a number of teachers for your entire life. You must have observed that some of the teachers, they look into your eyes and they make that bond or connection with you, but some of them, they don't care. They're just there to finish their lecture and they go about it. So what makes your listening more effective is the teacher who looks into your eyes, who's looking at you, who's making that bond, that eye connection, which is very much required in order to be a very good speaker and listener as well, right? अगर आप क्लास ले रहे हैं और आपने अपना सर नीचे किया हुआ, आपने मोबाइल में लगे हुए या अपनी piece of paper पे lines लगा रहे हैं, तो then you're not listening, you're just hearing, because the teacher is just creating noises and you're not trying to make out the meaning. It's not applicable to everybody, because I have known for a fact that there are students, they are so creative that they can do multitasking, but most of the students, they need to focus on the speaker in order to listen. Otherwise, they are just hearing. And do not prejudge the speaker or his message. The only way you're going to be an effective listener is that you do not judge the person who is speaking. For example, if one of your classmates come to this rostrum or the stage to present something or to sing or do anything, if you're judging them by the background music or background knowledge that you have about them, then you're not going to be able to listen to them. You're going to hear what you want to hear. You're getting my point? आपकी खुद की सोच उस बंदे के लिए जो है वो आपकी listening को affect करेगी. तो if you want to listen to somebody for the content they are sharing, you have to be very neutral. You do not have to judge the person. And then you can take notes, of course. That is the best way to be an effective listener. And what you can do is you can link the information being spoken to you with everything that you know already. Do not prejudge, but once you're listening to something, then you can link it to the prior knowledge. And do not interrupt the speaker unnecessarily, because then you will lose the interest and speaker might lose the stance they were in. So it is very important to wait for the turn or be an effective listener. Only ask relevant questions to yourself for clarification in your understanding. If you talk about मैम लाइट नहीं आ रही, मैम ये हो रहा है, मैम ये गूगल क्लासरूम क्यों करनी है, ये इस तरह से क्यों करना है, those are irrelevant questions. Your relevant questions should be about the topics that we have to cover, because learning has to take place. You cannot deny that. अगर आप इन क्या कहते हैं, what can we call it, like आप irrelevant stuff के बारे में ज़्यादा concerned रहेंगे तो problem होगी. वो सारी चीज़ें technical हैं, you have to learn them. But these are more important than those. So you have to focus on these. Coming towards reading skills, if you remember in first semester we talked about reading skills, how skimming and scanning are different techniques used in reading skills. So we are going to have a recap for that. Skimming is used to quickly gather the most important information or the gist of the entire thing. Run your eyes over the text, noting important information. Use skimming to quickly get up to speed on a current business situation. Obviously, the newspaper is full of news, right? And some of the news are very lengthy to cover in one reading, so you need to know how to skim it for the gist. Of course, for that matter, for that purpose, what do? We read the headlines and we go about it. But sometimes we need to know what is happening in the article, so we need to know how to skim it. For example, the newspaper, quickly to get the general news of the day. Magazines, quickly to discover which articles you would like to read in more detail. Business and travel brochures, quickly to get information or to get informed. So that is skimming. Now, reading skills also involve scanning. Scanning is used to find a particular piece of information What you can do is you can run your eyes over the text looking for the specific piece of information that you need. Use scanning on schedules, meeting plans. For example, when you are looking at your schedule, you would look for, let's say we have a class on Wednesdays or Saturdays or any other day. So you'll quickly jump to the column where it says Wednesdays or Thursdays or Saturdays. That is how you scan for the specific or particular piece of information that you need. Some of the examples are the what's on TV section of your newspaper, a airplane schedule, a conference guide, or a brochure telling you about different products. Let's say you want to buy a DSLR, so you'll go to the section where it says cameras and you'll skip the rest of it. So that is scanning. Apart from scanning and skimming, there is extensive reading and intensive reading. What is extensive reading? Extensive reading is used to obtain a general understanding of a subject and includes reading longer texts for pleasure as well as business books. Use extensive reading skills to improve your general knowledge of business procedures. Do not worry if you do not understand each word. So that is extensive. For example, if you're reading a novel, obviously you're not reading for the sake of vocabulary. You're not reading for the sake of, in order to understand each and every page. You're reading for the sake of the actual message or moral story that the novel has to offer. So that is extensive reading. Some of the examples of extensive reading are the latest marketing strategy book, a novel you read before going to bed, magazine articles that interests you. Reading skills. Then again, intensive reading is used on shorter text in order to extract specific information. It includes very close, accurate reading for detail. Use intensive reading skills to grasp the details of a specific situation. In this case, it is important that you understand each word, number, or fact. Now, some of the examples of intensive reading is an insurance claim, a contract of employment, or a letter of business, which has, very important news such as resignation letter, promotion letter, or let's say somebody has claimed something or blamed you for something, so you need to go into details. So that is intensive reading. What is the difference between extensive and intensive, and then skimming and scanning? That is something that you're going to explain it to me after this lecture. Then there is critical thinking. This is a form of language analysis that does not take the given text at face value. It is about reading between the lines. Whenever we look at the text, it says something and it can mean a number of things, especially in fiction. If we talk about critical readers, thus recognize not only what a text says, but also how the text portrays the subject matter. What a text means, interpretation, analyze the text and assert a meaning for the next text as a whole. So critical thinking is very important, which is almost not present in our society or our educational system, because we believe in getting degrees and getting our attendance done or etc. Critical thinking comes within. It is every individual's responsibility to be a critical thinker. You have to think for yourself. You have to think about your own future. यहाँ क्या होता है कि most of the people, they do what they do because their mother told them, because उनको बड़े भाई ने कहा था ये कर ले, उन्होंने देखा कि फलाने के भतीजे ने ये किया था तो वो उसको इतनी बड़ी नौकरी मिल गई तो मैं ये कर लेता हूँ. हम ये नहीं देखते कि हमारी कैपेबिलिटी है भी कि नहीं. हम ये नहीं देखते कि क्या हम उस सिचुएशन में सरवाइव कर भी सकते हैं क्या नहीं. और इसमें कोई शेम वाली बात नहीं है. एवरीबडी इज़ नॉट कट आउट टू बी अ वेरी वेल रेड मैन और वुमन. इट्स ओके. some people are just metric pass but they are so good. उनके manners, उनके etiquettes, उनका उठना बैठना, ओढ़ना पहनना इतना ज़बरदस्त होता है कि बंदा एक दफ़ा तो कहता है माशाल्लाह, ठीक है। कुछ लोग PhD से भी आगे पोस्ट डॉक्टरेट करके भी अजीब से ही रह जाते हैं। तो एजुकेशन हर एक को डिफरेंटली अफेक्ट करती है, एंड दैट कम्स विद द क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग। इफ़ वी नो हाउ टू critically analyze our situation, our own limitations, only then we will be able to be a very good survivor in any field. And if we talk about reading, we will be able to be a critical reader if we read extensively, intensively, by skimming and scanning. If we use those techniques, only then we can become critical readers. हमारे यहाँ reading का concept ही नहीं है. Concept in the sense that there is no habit. अगर आप किसी बाहर के मुल्क में जाएं, आई होप आप में से बहुत सारे लोग जाएंगे, यू विल सी दैट देयर इज़ अ कल्चर ऑफ रीडिंग. हमारे यहाँ क्या होता है कि अगर हमारे पास फ्री टाइम है हम गाने लगा लेंगे, और दैट्स ओके, गाने लगा लेंगे, गेम खेल ली, मोबाइल पर देख लिया, व्हाट्सएप देख लिया, फेसबुक देख लिया, बट हम पढ़ते बहुत कम हैं, राइट. अगर आप बाहर के मुल्क जाएंगे तो डेफिनेटली मोबाइल्स उनके पास भी है, टेक्नोलॉजी उनके पास भी है, बट व्हाट दे आर डूइंग इज़ दे विल हैव अ बुक इन देयर हैंड्स. वो कोई ना कोई मैगज़ीन, कोई नॉवल, कोई आर्टिकल, कुछ ना कुछ पढ़ रहे होंगे. तो वो एक रीडिंग कल्चर है. यहाँ पर हमारे जो पढ़ाने वाले हैं या बहुत ही अच्छी पोजीशंस पे हैं, वो खुद नहीं पढ़ते, वो अगलों को क्या इंस्पायर करेंगे, राइट. सो रीडिंग कल्चर अगर डेवलप हो तो क्रिटिकल रीडिंग बहुत अच्छी हो सकती है. द नेक्स्ट skill is speaking skills. It includes a number of things. The first thing is the tone. The tone of voice we use is responsible for about 35 to 40% of the message we are sending. Tone involves the volume you use, the level and the type of emotion that you communicate, and the emphasis that you place on the words that you choose, right? तो आपकी जो टोन है, जो आपका अंदाज़े बयान है, वो कैसा है. फॉर एग्ज़ाम्पल, वन ऑफ़ योर क्लासमेट्स इज़ वेरी एंग्री. वो आपको एक तो बड़े ही गुस्सीले अंदाज से देखेंगे, ठीक है. दूसरा, उनकी आवाज़ में अपने आप ही एक आपको टोन शो होगी कि दे आर एक्चुअली एंग्री. सो दैट टोन इज़ वेरी मच इम्पॉर्टेंट इन स्पीकिंग स्किल्स. अब स्टूडेंट्स क्या करते हैं, मोस्ट ऑफ देम दे सबमिट असाइनमेंट्स लेट, और दे हैव अ नंबर ऑफ लेम एक्सक्यूजेस टू टेल टू द टीचर, डिपार्टमेंट और मेट्स, और फिर वो विक्टिम भी प्ले करते हैं कि हमारे साथ ज़्यादती हो गई. सो वो टोन चेंज होती है. पहले वो कहेंगे मैम हमसे आप ना सबमिट कर लें, हम लेट हो गए. अगर मैम मना कर दे, टीचर मना कर दे, तो उनकी टोन थोड़ी सी चेंज हो जाएगी. मैम देखें बहुत मुश्किलात हैं, ये है, फलाना है. फिर अगर टीचर थोड़ा सा हार्श हो जाए, रूड हो जाए, तो फिर स्टूडेंट का जो टोन है वो भी चेंज होता जाता है. तो दैट इज़ टोन. अगेन, इफ़ यू आर प्रेजेंटिंग इन फ्रंट ऑफ अ क्राउड, सो योर टोन इज़ वेरी मच इम्पॉर्टेंट. अगर सम ऑफ यू लाइक पोइट्री, तो अगर पोइट्री पढ़ते हुए अंदाज़े में किसी का अच्छा नहीं है तो पोइट्री सुनने में मज़ा नहीं आता. दैट इज़ द टोन. Then there is pitch. Pitch refers to the rise and fall in the human voice. It plays a crucial role in communication. Questions, for example, should end on a higher note. Affirmative statements should end in a level or slightly lower pitch. The ending of statements on a high pitch can create doubt in your listeners. Vary your pitch throughout your presentation to establish and reinforce your message. अब देखें, जब आप एक प्रेजेंटेशन दे रहे होते हैं तो उसमें एक पॉइंट आएगा जो बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है, जिसको आपने एम्फसाइज़ करना है, और कुछ पॉइंट्स ऐसे होंगे जो रेलेवेंट हैं लेकिन उनको एम्फसाइज़ करना लाजमी नहीं है. तो वहाँ आपकी पिच आपका साथ देगी. फॉर एग्जांपल, इफ़ आई हैव टू आस्क यू टू सबमिट एन असाइनमेंट, आई विल आस्क, डियर क्लास, यू हैव टू सबमिट एन असाइनमेंट एट 6th July around 10 a.m. So I will put effort or emphasis on the deadline, because deadline is more important for you to understand, so that you can schedule or make up your mind how you're going to attempt the assignment. So that is how your pitch works in speaking skills. This is the only way that you will know that the ma'am is asking or the teacher is asking for the assignment on 6th of July, and we have to work accordingly because that emphasis was on the deadline. So you will work around it. You will go to the previous information that I shared and you'll try to understand the assignment and try to meet the deadline. So pitch is important in speaking skills. Rhythm is the pattern of the sounds that you produce. Stressing and de-stressing the syllables and words gives us rhythm in English. Use rhythm to carry meaning. Where you give pauses is important in speaking skills. Then comes the stress. Stress means to emphasize a sound and make certain syllable and words louder, longer, higher in pitch. Every word in English has at least one syllable with the primary stress or emphasis. It is not only essential to stress syllable and words, but we must also de-stress other syllable and words. For example, English. First syllable is stressed. Second syllable is slightly de-stressed. English. That is how we speak. If you're talking to your client and you have to emphasize a budget raise, or you want to ask more for more money, then you'll try to bargain for something. You will have to barter some kind of deal with the client, and you'll emphasize on those points which are beneficial to you, and then you'll de-emphasize irrelevant or less important points so that the client is focusing on the emphasis or stressed information or the words for that matter. Then comes intonation. Intonation is the rise and the fall while speaking. Correct intonation and stress are the key to speaking English fluently with good pronunciation. The entire variation of pitch while speaking is called intonation. कुछ लोग होते हैं, आपने अगर सुना हो, गौर किया हो, तो उनकी बात समझने के लिए एक्स्ट्रा एफर्ट लगानी पड़ती है बिकॉज वो ऐसे बोलते हैं. They don't have rise and fall in their voice. You might have had a teacher like that, or you must have somebody in your family जो बहुत क्लियरली नहीं बोल पाते. वो लफ्ज़ को जो एक दूसरे से अलग करके बोलना है ना, वो नहीं कर पाते. That intonation is lacking, and that is achievable, or आप उसको बेटर कर सकते हैं प्रैक्टिस के साथ. मैंने खुद किया है, खुद भी आप कर सकते हैं. जिस तरह से आप एम्फेसिस देना चाहें, जिन वर्ड्स पर देना चाहें, उस तरह से आप अपनी इंटोनेशन को बेहतर कर सकते हैं. तो दैट इज़ ऑल अबाउट स्पीकिंग स्किल्स. व्हाट दे हैव टोन, पिच, रिदम, and then intonation. Now, a sentence can be spoken differently depending on the speaker's intention. Look at the following sentences. Speak them out loud and especially stress the word that is in bold writing. Now listen to me very carefully. The first sentence. I did not read anything about the disaster. 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 I didn't read anything about the disaster. I did not read anything about the disaster. So you see that I have tried to put emphasis on I, then not, read, anything, disaster. So that is how you put emphasis, stress, or you play with your intonation in order to become a better speaker. If we have to emphasize on the word disaster, then we'll be reading this sentence as I did not read anything about the disaster. So the highlight of the sentence is disaster. If I have to emphasize on myself that I personally have not read it, so I'll say that I did not read anything about the disaster, so that the person who is hearing or listening to me can gather the meaning that it's only me who has not read about the. Towards writing skills, effective writing is not a gift that you are born with. Rather, it is a skill that you cultivate. Clear writing means clear thinking. If you're thinking clearly, if you have critical thinking, if you have read a number of things, if you have read material, you have the background in your head, then you can write effectively. And it is not an inborn talent. Some of the people are very good, and ऐसा कहा जाता है यार उस वो तो मतलब automatically naturally लिखता है, लेकिन that writing is developed with practice. What you have to do is you have to think before you write, before you put pen to paper or hands to keyboard. Consider what you want to say. Whenever I'm posting lectures, or if I'm making PPTs, if I'm making any assignments or announcement, I think about you people, how the students will gather the information, what kind of thinking processes my student have. तो जिस तरह का आपका थिंकिंग प्रोसेस है, मैं उस तरह से मैसेज को डेवलप करने की कोशिश करती हूँ ताकि आपको आसानी हो और आप आसानी से समझ सकें. तो मैं ऑडियंस को माइंड में रखती हूँ. The second most important point is ask yourself, what should my audience know or think after reading this email, proposal or report? So this is how I create my messages. इसी तरह जब आप किसी को मैसेज कर रहे हैं या ईमेल लिख रहे हैं या लेट्स से लेटर लिख रहे हैं, या आपने कोई ग्रांट लेनी है, कोई स्कॉलरशिप लेना है, तो उसके साथ आपने कोई ऐसे अटैच करना है, तो उसको आप उस तरह से लिखेंगे जैसा ऑडियंस होगा. सो ऑडियंस इज ऑल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. ऑफ द स्टेप्स that can help you improve your writing skills. First of all, be direct. There is no point in being indirect or adding in unnecessary or irrelevant information to your writing. We have to be very concise when we are presenting our ideas, because it is usually seen or considered the first paragraph is the impression that you make on your reader. So if you want to impress your reader, you have to be very concise and direct. Avoid jargons. Jargons are those words which are field specific. For example, there is a word syntax which is different in computer and which is totally different in linguistics. They mean the same, but their function in both fields is different. In linguistics, syntax is the study of the sentence structure, but in computers, it is the study of important point is to avoid jargons. Jargons are the field specific words. For example, there is a word syntax which is used in linguistics as well as in computer science, and they almost mean the same, but their purpose, their function in both the fields are different. For example, in linguistics, syntax is the study of sentence structure, clauses, phrases and etc. But in computer science, it is the study of computer language. They all both talk about some kind of structure, but they are way too different in their fields. Similarly, if we talk about the jargon used by tailors and the jargon used by vegetable vendors, both of them would have different jargons. Vegetable vendors would mean जो सब्जियां बेचते हैं, और टेलर्स होते हैं जो कपड़े सीते हैं. इन दोनों के बोलने का अंदाज, इन दोनों के वर्ड चॉइसेस, इन दोनों के jargons टोटली डिफरेंट होंगे, क्योंकि उन दोनों की ऑडियंस डिफरेंट है. सो यू शुड अवॉइड jargons. One should only use simple language which is easily understandable to the common man. It so happens that in your presentation, in your final year presentation, there are people who are irrelevant to your field. If you use such jargons time and again, they might get confused. Once I was sitting in a PhD defense of linguistics, and the VC was from another department. He was from aviation, I guess. His degree was in aviation, and he couldn't understand what the candidate wanted to say, because in his field those words, those terms meant something totally different, and in the candidate's field, that was linguistics, it meant something else. So he kept on asking questions which were not making sense to the candidate, because the candidate was from another field. So what the candidate could have done is he could have explained those terms in simple language for the man who couldn't understand. He could have just simply say कि सर मेरी फील्ड में इन टर्म्स का मीनिंग ये है, और उसके बाद वो उनको टाइम एंड अगेन टर्म्स को यूज़ ना करता, तो वो जो ऑडियंस इरेलेवेंट बैठी हुई है दे कुड अंडरस्टैंड. Writers often make mistakes and they believe in using a big word when a simple one will do. हम क्या करते हैं, हम सोचते हैं कि हम मुश्किल लफ्ज़ लिखेंगे और बड़े बड़े सेंटेंसेस लिखेंगे तो इम्प्रेशन बनेगा. इट इज़ नॉट नेसेसरी. आई हैव स्टडीड लिंग्विस्टिक्स, लैंग्वेज, लिटरेचर एक्सेट्रा. आई हैव डन बैचलर्स इन एजुकेशन. I have done TEFL, etc. So whenever I am reading, I prefer simple reading. There is a mathematician and grammarian whose name is Noam Chomsky. उन्होंने एक ऐसे लिखा जो मैंने खुद एटलीस्ट 25 दफ़ा पढ़ा होगा, एंड आई स्टिल कैन नॉट मेक आउट द मीनिंग बिकॉज इन द फर्स्ट 5 pages देर इज़ नो फुल स्टॉप, नो कॉमा, एंड द jargon, द वर्ड्स आर सो डिफ़िकल्ट और दे मीन सो मैनी थिंग्स. अब इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में क्या होता है कि एक ही वर्ड के मल्टीपल मीनिंग्स होते हैं. अब मेरे पास उसका मीनिंग जो रजिस्टर है वो उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में वो यूज़ ही नहीं हो रहा, सो आई कुडंट मेक आउट द मीनिंग. So I had to read somebody else's interpretation of that essay. So ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आप अपने लिखाई को बहुत ही डेकोरेटिव और मुश्किल वर्ड्स से डेकोरेट करें. सिंपल वर्ड्स आर ओके. रेपिटेशन नहीं होनी चाहिए, लेकिन सिंप्लिसिटी शुड बी ओके. देन रीड what you have written. Put yourself in your reader's shoes. इज़ योर पॉइंट क्लियर एंड वेल स्ट्रक्चर्ड. जब मैं आप लोगों के लिए मैसेजेस कंपोज करती हूँ तो फिर मैं सोचती हूँ कि इफ़ आई वर अ स्टूडेंट तो क्या इसमें कोई मिसिंग है इन्फॉर्मेशन या कोई क्लैरिटी चाहिए कि नहीं चाहिए. तो इस तरह से आप सोच के लिखें कि आपकी ऑडियंस के लिए आप लिख रहे हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल यू आर सबमिटिंग एन असाइनमेंट, सो यू हैव टू मेक श्योर दैट यू आर आंसरिंग द रेलिवेंट क्वेश्चन. इट सो हैपन्स दैट स्टूडेंट्स दे look at the topic. If it is about reading, they start writing about everything that they know about reading. They do not focus on the question, and that is the biggest failure of all time. इसी तरह अगर आपका कोई क्लाइंट है और वो प्रोडक्ट आपसे जूतों का लेना चाह रहा है और आप अपने सारे प्रोडक्ट्स का लिख कर उसको दे दें कि मेरे पास ये वाला प्रोडक्ट है, वो वाला प्रोडक्ट है, that is irrelevant. You must only focus on the main point because your client is interested in shoes only. So you will write you will compose your message like that so that your audience, your client is captured and they can get what they wanted. And don't be afraid to ask a colleague or a friend to edit your work. The best way to get your written work very effective is to get somebody else to read it. वो कहते हैं ना कि एक सेट ऑफ आइज से 2 सेट ऑफ आइज आर बेटर. तो जो दूसरा देखेगा वो किसी और नज़रिए से देखेगा और उसमें बेटरमेंट आएगी. ऑलवेज वेलकम फीडबैक, डोंट रिजेंट इट, एंड प्रैक्टिस एवरी डे. इट इज़ अ स्किल एंड स्किल्स आर ओनली डेवलप्ड एंड बेटर्ड व्हेन यू प्रैक्टिस. जब आप साइकिलिंग सीखते हैं शुरू में नहीं हो रही होती, मतलब बंदा गिर जाता है, बैलेंस नहीं होता है, रोड पर कैसे चलानी है नहीं पता चलता, लेकिन जो बंदा प्रैक्टिस करता है तो उसकी स्किल बेहतर होती है. सिमिलरली इफ़ यू राइट ऑन डेली बेसिस, लेट्स से यू ओनली राइट 500 words a day, this practice will make your writing better. Then coherence. We have talked about coherence before. I believe in one of our classes I talked about it. Coherence in the writing is the logical glue that allows readers to move easily and clearly from one idea to the next. जम्बल्ड अप नहीं होने चाहिए. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि मैं पहले पॉइंट में बात कर रही हूँ जूतों की और दूसरों में मैं लेट्स से चूड़ियों की बात स्टार्ट कर देती हूँ. नो, इफ़ आई वांट टू जंप फ्रॉम वन पॉइंट, वन आइडिया टू अनदर, one product to another, there should be a transition, there should be a coherence, right? That's all for today. So these skills are very much important in business communication or any kind of communication. They are your faculties of communication. Although a human has taste,